It's been a couple of weeks. I've been sick. There's no better way to get around it. It's hard to record when you're coughing every 5 seconds and try not to have phlegm exit out of your throat in a very violent fashion. But nonetheless, I'm here and I'm back. So let's get to it. So as I mentioned before, and I'm probably going to mention it enough times, I am a DJ at my local roller skating rink. And one of the events that we do regularly is the cha-cha slide. And it is always fascinating about how generations of kids will grow up to not recognize certain songs that older people know, or only stay within the bubble of the music that they've been listening to since they were younger. But it never fails to surprise me about how almost innately, how instinctually babies, like toddlers, know the cha-cha slide. It's actually really impressive. And that goes for a lot of other dances as well. I'm very surprised about how many younger kids, again, we're talking like 3-4-year-olds on skates, knowing like the Macarena. They know the Cupid Shuffle, which we don't do the Cupid Shuffle, but I've seen it. YMCA is a good example. And of course, new stuff like Hot to Go. It's very interesting to see like babies not be able to comprehend basic motor components, but still could do the cha-cha slide no problem. It's very fascinating. This note I had a couple of weeks ago, so it's kind of irrelevant now, but it still came up on TikTok a couple of weeks ago. There was a trend going around on TikTok where people were clearly showing and expressing who their favorite artists of the pop girlies were by showing how many songs they had saved in their Spotify lists. Which I fear is a little redundant because you are comparing very different discographies against each other. And so it's like in this audio list, you had like Taylor Swift next to Tate McRae, next to Chappell Roan, next to Olivia Rodrigo, and all of them have vastly different amounts of songs they have released. They're all in different parts of their artist's career that makes you go, this isn't an accurate way to express about who your favorites are. Because yes, you might only like 5 songs out of Chappell Roan's album, but she has one album. Olivia Rodrigo has 2 albums, as opposed to Ariana Grande, who's been doing this since early 2010s. Like, it's not a good way to compare things. I'm going to finish this off by listing 5 pieces of stationery that I really enjoy. There's nothing special about them. There's nothing super like extravagant about all of these. Most of these are everyday, like everyone collectively agrees on these sort of things. But I feel like my list needs to be up there. In no particular order, I got a couple. We're starting off with the Pilot pen. Of course, a classic, everybody loves her. There literally is no competition on the market as easily accessible as these little guys. I've been using these for school notes since the Lord's era of middle school, and that has been carrying me throughout my entire time since then. So they are very reliable, they're very fun, loving all the colors and stuff like that. Of course, this has to be acknowledged in a sense if you're not talking about anything other than just classic, easy to purchase stationery. My only fancy one I really have are the midliners, even though these are also very easy to attain, I believe, and they're a lot more popular now ever since stationery kind of got like an easy uplift post bullet journaling, scrapbooking of the pandemic era. I love these so much, I actually been using them a little too much during my time at annotating. I actually need to get a new set. But they're just so nice, and I'm loving the way that they softly highlight rather than harshly go over the page and then it's bleeding through and all that sort of crap. And I think this is just the most stationary sort of color you could ever see. I have other sets, but I picked this one because it's my favorite. And there's nothing that screams more colors for annotating and stationery and being very organized on paper than this color. Of course, I have to go with the classic post-it note. I just think, and especially this color as well, they've kind of perfected about the whole purpose of what Post-it notes are. And recently when I was in college, I actually invested in a set of the transparent Post-it notes so that you could write over them if it was a book that you weren't going to be able to own or keep or annotate in any some sort of way. And it was the coolest thing to use ever, because then you just had a whole bunch of clear Post-it notes afterwards looking on your wall just like a crazy maniac, being like, whoa, there's writing on the wall. It was really, really cool, and the texture of it is really, really nice. So shout out to the transparent ones, but also you can't beat the classics. I don't have the other two on me because one of them only exists in my memory, but hands down the best part about school supply shopping when I was younger in elementary school, which by the way was one of my favorite times of the year. I got a little too obsessed over school supply shopping, and that stuff literally made or break my entire year. And so shout out to all the school supply lists that was always so specific about what it was asking for, that it always was never gonna be the ability to grab something that was really cool. It always had to be super standard, super plain and blah, and it was, oh my god. But the one I want to note in particular were the super fun folders that you can get, especially in the early 2010s. These are the ones I was able to find. I don't know if they're available now, but as definitely compared to the stuff that you would get nowadays, it's just not the same thing. And the problem was is that you were never able to obtain these because since they didn't have any prongs in them, they were never requested in the school supply list. And so I always want those, the ones that didn't have the prongs, but the list said you had to get the ones with the prongs, and it was always the fucking boring ones. And then lastly, something that I do have down there, but I'm not gonna grab it. These were something that I also came across recently, which I found very, very cool, and maybe it's just the one that I have in particular, but I'm a very big fan of the decomposition notebooks. I'm not a big fan of composition notebooks in general, unless they're the spiral kind, and so I believe I invested a lot of my undergrad notebooks into having the spiral composition notebooks in particular. But the decomposition notebooks and the spiral ones in general, I think, are just a really nice way of having the pages composed and put together and structured. And of course, they're a little bit more sustainable, and I really appreciate that. And they have really cool covers on them as well. I think it elevates it just a little bit beyond the standard decomposition notebook, which is good because I didn't even like those to begin with. But that's because I'm a spiral person at heart. I mean, everybody knows this, but I'm going to show you it anyways. This is one of my favorite notebooks, the decomposition notebook. I mean, look at how pretty this is. Ugh, there's dust. It's very pretty green. It's very outdoorsy, very nature, very heather, of course. But it's got this sort of binding to it, and that shit is ugly because then you open it up and it just won't stay, you know? As opposed to the spirals that I have, which is basically the same thing as this, like they're also decomposition notebooks, they're just the spiral kind. It's just easier for you to open up. But nonetheless, I think it's just nicer because look, 100% post-consumer waste recycled pages. It's so nice. They're just so nice. I just think they're lovely, and again, they're a little bit more sustainable, and that's all that matters in the midst of making a whole bunch of notebooks out of a shit ton of paper. But that is all for the week. I'm hoping that I will get better so that we can continue schedule as properly. I wasn't expecting to be sick for the last 2 weeks, but here I am now, and that's all that matters. So until next week, see you guys.